Hey y'all, welcome to my Black History Month inspired nail set, and I wanted to show you guys all of the materials I'll be using for this set. I'm using jade from Bluesky, number A827 from Beetles, tropix from Bluesky, number G1450 from Morovan, number 248 from Rarjsm, sculpted gel paint from Makartt, and there's a few others that I added later on in the video, but I show you what those are. I also use these gold beads, this gold chain, and some jewels. So usually the way I work on nails is I do a base coat on all of the nails and then I add details all at once. But this time I wanted to work on each nail separately. Starting with the pinky, I drew a line down the center, and I'm using the dark green for this, and I separated the nail into thirds. Then I went ahead and blocked off the squares with the darker green, and I was alternating with this color because I wanted to use the lighter green on the other squares. Here I am adding the lighter green. Oh, I didn't even really explain what this was. So when I was researching what to put on this nail set, I was on Pinterest, and I was also asking my Nigerian friends what I should do, because in case you didn't read the title, this is Nigerian-Inspired. I don't remember what the name of it was, but I searched Nigerian patterns, and this was one of the pictures that came up. And by the way, this is a little inspo picture I made for this nail set. I normally don't do this for all of my sets, but if there's a strong theme within the set, I'll do this. Like if it's just inspired by other nail designs that I can just put together, I won't do that. But if it's inspired by more obscure things and objects and not nail specific things, then I will do something like this. So yeah, I wanted to dedicate at least one nail to just like the different textures and cloth materials that Nigerians use in their fashion, because I feel like that's a big part of the culture and it's something that you definitely can't miss from the culture. So in the top right square, I did 3 little triangles. On the middle dark green square, I did 2 circles. I was going to do a little circle in between them, but I think that would have made it look a little odd, so I just left it with the 2. On the bottom right square, I did a little flower design. I don't really like how it came out, but it doesn't look bad next to all the other different patterns. By the way, a tip for making petals like this, get a kind of like a relatively thick glob on the edge of your nail art brush and just plop it down there in like a circle kind of formation, and then drag the rest out very lightly. On the remaining squares, I just did dashed diagonal lines. Since this is inspired by a cloth material, I gave it a matte top coat because wet cloth is glossy. Exactly. I also saw a lot of beads and gold jewelry when I was researching, so I wanted to add this gold chain. I made sure to seal the chain with top coat, but making sure I didn't get it on any of the matte parts of the nail. Which is a perfect segue into the next nail, because this next nail is solely inspired by all the gold in the jewelry. It's also inspired by this maximalist nail set. Honestly, these types of nail sets aren't my thing, but I love to look at them. They're just so pretty. So I just did a simple French tip using the base Nude from Bluesky, and then I covered the rest of the nail with the gold polish that I showed y'all earlier. Looking back, I wish I put down the gems first, but I had already put the polish on the nail and I didn't want to waste it. Using Makartt rhinestone glue, I went ahead and started gluing down gold, red, and emerald green rhinestones. I just made sure that the colors weren't too similar next to each other and that I had it relatively evenly dispersed throughout the nail. The reason I chose these colors is, like I said before, gold is like a big thing in the culture, and also when I was looking up the beads, a lot of them were like an orangey reddish color, so I went with the red rhinestone, and green obviously because their flag has green in it. Once I glued everything down, I went in again with the gold and I just sealed the edges of the rhinestones with it. Then, since I knew metallic gels are notorious for not completely curing or still leaving some residue when you wipe your finger over it, I decided to go over it with a base coat that I did not care about. I always recommend that every nail tech or nail artist keeps a base coat that they don't care about so they can use it for times like this, because I knew I was going to get some gold residue left on my base coat brush, and I did. And the purpose of this is just so you don't let that happen to your top coat. Once I cured it, I also went over everything with an alcohol pad, and I did this twice until I wasn't seeing that yellow tint on the alcohol pad anymore. Also, side note, look how pretty the gold is on the underside. I wish it looked like that above, but it doesn't. Oh well. Then I used a gloss top coat from Makartt to top the nail. This is my favorite top coat. I've been using this since like the first time I ever started doing nails, which was in 2020. I cycled through different top coats, but then I was having issues with a sticky inhibition layer, even though it was supposed to be no wipe. So I was like, let me go back to my roots, and I haven't gone back since. Also, as you can see, I went over the gems as well with the top coat. There's a lot of debate within the nail community on whether you should do that or not because it takes away from the details of the rhinestones. But here, I didn't really care if it took away from the detail because I wanted them to be a little more round and less detailed anyways. Also, it protects the rhinestones even more, it makes them more sturdy. And the details on the other gems didn't really go away that much. Now, this nail that I'm working on right now is inspired by another cloth / pattern. I chose this one even though it was kind of out of my comfort zone because I hate drawing flowers, but I really wanted to do a 3D flower and I didn't want to do like a basic 3D flower because what did that have to do with this set? Also, I'm kind of tired of seeing them everywhere. Am I gonna do a set with them tomorrow? Yeah, but not this one. So once I saw that inspo when I was searching for Nigerian patterns, I was like, oh, this is a perfect way to add my little 3D aspect in 3D flower. So I made the background gold once again. Right now I'm just going over it with a base coat for the same reason that I did last time. Make sure you wipe under the nail because sometimes polish gets stuck under there and it doesn't cure. Then I decided to give it a matte top coat because once again, this nail was inspired by a cloth pattern. Now in the inspo picture, there were like leaves and vines / stems in the background, so I just wanted to recreate that. I drew random flowy lines throughout the nail, and then I made the leaves by doing the same thing that I did with the petals. I kind of got most of the paint at the base, and then I just swiftly flicked it upwards. So it kind of naturally fanned out the leaf, and I didn't have to try too hard to make the leaf shape. I also went in with white to add tiny little lines on the leaves just like it was in the inspo picture. Once I cured all that, I went in with another white and I just started outlining the flower that I wanted to do. This is probably the most common tip with nail art, but in case you haven't heard it already, always start with a white base, especially when you're working over colors like this or if you're using a lighter color on top, because it's going to leave a blank canvas for the color that you want to layer on top, and it's going to make it pop even more because obviously I did not want my flower to be white. I want it to be like a pinkish red. So I first did a layer of the white to make sure that the pinkish red could still stand through or show through past all of the gold and the layers below it. Here's the pinkish red color I was talking about. The reason I chose this color is because the beads, or a lot of the beads that I was seeing, were a similar color to this. Once I had finished layering all of my colors, it was time for me to add the 3D component. Now, while I was making this flower, or shortly after I finished making the 3D flower, I had wished that I added more dimension to my painting of the flower. But looking back on it now, I'm glad I didn't because I prefer the way it turned out, and I don't think it would have been that detailed if I had painted the dimension onto the flat flower. You'll see what I mean soon. So the way I did the flower is I went petal by petal and I kind of just rolled out, and like you see right here, I'm like smudging it into the base of the flower. It actually helps better if you roll it. That makes it blend better with the nail. I made sure the edges curled upwards, so once again it has that dimension and it's not just a flat boring flower. I wanted it to really like pop out of the nail. Here's an example of me rolling it to make it blend better so you can get an idea of what I mean. After I did the first round or row of the petals, I started overlapping. So I did the same process. I took the point of my my silicone brush tool, and I kind of just poked the middle of the dot, and then I rolled it from side to side until it spread more into a petal shape, and then that's when I started blending it into the rest of the nail. I just kept on repeating this until I filled up the entire flower. And in the middle of the process, the sun came out and I could not resist getting this video. It wasn't done yet, but like guys, it looks so pretty. This is how the flower was looking when I was pretty much done. Well, I think I was done. When I was done with the 3D part of the flower, I still had to add some details, which you will see in a second. Going in with my Makartt rhinestone glue, I added 4 or 5 of these little gold spherical beads, ? I did this to tie in with the aspects of the other gold throughout the nail set, and also this is just like a common design choice for 3D flowers in the nail community. Now at this point, I thought the flower was looking a little boring, and to be honest, I was a bit disappointed of how it was looking, and I knew I wanted to add more dimension, and this is when I was regretting not adding dimension when I first painted the flower. But then I had the idea to add red to the edges of the petals and kind of feather it inwards to create a bit of an ombre, but not too much, because when I was doing this, I kind of liked the red just on the edges. I don't think I would have been able to have the same effect if I had added the dimension on the painted version, because the reason I didn't paint the 3D gel itself is because, well, I am here, but I mean like fully with the pink color, is because there are usually imperfections within the 3D gel, and that really just brings it out, especially with this polish, because it can never get like a straight opaque thing. If you've painted on 3D gel before, you know, like it doesn't look solid. You can only get that solid effect if the gel is already the color that you want it to be. Painting it just doesn't do what you think it's gonna do. So that's another reason why I was like being very what's the word? I wasn't using too much gel here when I'm painting over it, because I didn't want it to get all like gloopy and messy. Moving on to the next nail, this is actually heavily inspired by something that my roommate told me when I was asking her for inspo or ideas for this nail set, because she's Nigerian, and she said a nickname that Nigerians call each other is Naija. It's spelled with like a 9JA, so I really wanted to incorporate that into the set. I had no idea how until I saw, what's her name? I think it was Nails from the Trap. She had painted like a number, and on the inside she drew a star, so I thought that was like a cooler way than just writing a boring old number. So my idea, inspired from nails from the Trap, is that I would do the same thing, except in the center I would do like a 3D heart or a 3D something. I ended up just going with a 3D circle that was, not a 3D circle, a 3D pearl. I wanted to do a heart, but the hearts that I had were too big. I wanted to add gel to the base of the nail to make it like have 3D like waves and swoops, because I was trying to also go for the flag vibes, because you know flags wave in the wind, so I thought that's what the 3D aspects would give, like a flag was waving in the wind. And of course I made the spelling of Naija in green because their flag has green in it. Once again, I'm adding gold to the edges of the letters just to give it more like just more pizzazz, and also to tie in the gold with the rest of the nail set. Y'all, this took me so much time because I had to individually place each bead. I don't even want to check. I don't even want to see how much time it took me, because I know it was like an embarrassing amount. Like my thumb started cramping up, but the show had to keep going. Now it is time to move on to the last nail, which was inspired by this black hairstyle and also these beads. I started by doing one layer base coat of this brown color. Then I traced the general direction I wanted to go with the braids. Honestly, I tried 3 different techniques for how to do this braid. I knew I wanted it to be 3D, and I knew I wanted it to look as much like a black woman's braid as possible, and I wasn't exactly sure how that would turn out since I was working with 3D gel and not, hair. My first immediate thought was to just put like little circular globs on there and then form them into a braided shape, but it wasn't really turning out the way I wanted it to. Then I had the idea to roll out 3 different thin strands of the 3D gel and literally braid it, but it was not giving black braids. And also it was surprisingly very hard, because if one strand touched the other one slightly when you didn't want it to, that's stuck there forever. You're never getting that apart in a neat fashion. The last technique I tried was just putting down the 3D gel. I didn't have to roll it, but I did sometimes. Just putting it down along the guidelines that I drew and then flattening it out and just kind of carving out a braided shape with my silicone tool. Then I would go in where the edge of the creases were and go in with the pointed part of my silicone tool and then kind of fold it in more so it was more like rounded, like a braid is, instead of square. No, this part I was still going back and forth with in my head if I should make this nail matte or not, because hair is like matte in real life, but it can also be shiny. So I don't know. After I gave it a matte top coat, I went in with black polish and I started adding the individual hairs on each part of the braid. At first, I was just trying to go line by line, like initially, but I didn't like how messy it was looking. So then I refined my technique to putting like a strand of polish at the base of each like little knot of a braid. And then I dragged out the lines from there and it got so much neater. Once I was somewhat happy with the braid, I don't know, like I feel like I could do better. Like I feel like you could achieve a better braid on a nail. If y'all have any like tips or ideas, or just let me know if you think it looks like a braid, please let me know in the comments. But once I finished that, I started making the little hair charm for the braids, and this was inspired by the bead that I showed you earlier. I just rolled out a flat kind of rectangle and then I placed it over a braid, and then I flattened it out more and like kind of tucked it into the braid in between the other braids and the edges, and then I went under it and kind of made it like curve around the braids so it looked like it was actually around, like cuffed around the braid. This wasn't in my original design idea, but I decided to add a little gold ring around it. I wanted to add a gold bead on the hair, but I decided not to because I didn't like the color of the gold. I knew it would have tied in better with the nails, like the gold gel polish, but I really was tired of messing with 3D gel because, like I said, my thumb was cramping and I knew it would have just been easier and quicker to add the gold ring, plus it was cute. I just gave the bead the same color scheme as the flower, and then I decided to make the scalp a lighter color to make the braids pop more because they were all kind of just blending into one blob. Plus, when I looked back at the reference, her scalp was way lighter than her actual hair, so hopefully I was thinking this would have helped. And then I kind of went over where I might have accidentally got the polish on the braids, and also I was trying to like sponge out the color because it was a little too bright for me. I also just went over the surface with a alcohol pad once again just to make sure there wasn't anything on the actual braids. And this is how the set turned out. Here's a reminder, this was the inspo and this is the set. If you're Nigerian, please let me know what you think. I would love to know your thoughts on how I represented your culture on a nail set.